I wanted to ask you about yesterday's, what Philip Alston called a half apology by the Secretary General. And I want to ask you, I guess, given that he was the special rapporteur on the case, he told the Miami Herald the following. He said, he apologizes that the UN has not done more to eradicate cholera, but not for causing the disease in the first place. As a result, there remains a good chance that little to no money will be raised and that the grand new approach will remain a breakthrough on paper, but one that brings little to the victims and people of Haiti. And I guess I just wanted to ask you, given that that is the phrase that he used, we didn't do enough, when in fact some people are saying the UN maybe did too much in terms of bringing it, does this, I mean, Philip Alston is a longtime human rights expert. What's the response to this critique?
Look, I think yesterday's statement by the Secretary General, and I think what we heard from the Deputy and Dr. Nabarro, I think was a very important step forward. We clearly understand and that some people may not be pleased or may not have heard what they wanted, what they wanted to hear. What we hope they heard is the Secretary General's words, the apology, and also his sincere determination of the UN system to move forward on this two-track approach. And I think if you heard from, if you listened to the reaction from the member states that spoke yesterday after the Secretary General delivered his remarks, I think they were very positive, they were very encouraging. Dr. Nabarro is being tasked to follow up with potential donors to ensure that we have the funding that we need.
I guess, I mean, I was just on a conference call of actual Haitians, and the reaction was decidedly more mixed, particularly on this issue of it seems like Mr. Ross Mountain seemed to indicate off microphone that it's still an open question, but has a decision been made to go the community route, that this would somehow, Jan Eliasson seemed to be saying it's very difficult to find out who was killed, so it's easier to do community projects. So people seem to say, like in most other instances where there's a mass tort of a kind, negligence or not, the people that were actually injured. You can think of 9/11. You can think of any number of things where people that were injured were compensated rather than building a playground.
I think, listen, I hope both the Deputy Secretary General and the Secretary General were very clear. On track 2, there are 2 sub-tracks, right? The community approach and individual approach. It is clear from what we've said, from the Deputy said, that initially we will move forward on the community approach. The individual approach requires a lot more steps, including the identification of deceased, of people who've been impacted, further consideration, further consultations with the victims groups and the communities. So no one is saying no to the individual approach. What we're saying is, in the immediate, we're focusing on the community approach, and from there, we will move forward.
And if Dr. Nabarro becomes the head of WHO, as he's running to become, you were saying like he's the point man to raise money. Is that?
I can only speak to the situation up until December 31st at midnight. Again, as to my answer to Apostolis, there is a determination from the Secretary General to ensure that the transition goes smoothly. The incoming team has been fully briefed on all these files, including and especially the Haiti file. Matthew.
To ask you on Bangladesh is saying that they have been asked for for 850 troops to serve in UNMISS in WOW, and I just wanted to, I guess this would be to replace the Kenyans that are leaving due to the firing of the general. Is this in any way coming from is this in addition to all of their other various peacekeeping commitment, engagements and other missions? And what would you say, again, I think they've done this before in South Sudan. There was a time where the Secretary General was following closely sort of political disputes in Bangladesh, and then that seemed to stop in exchange or in connection with or at the same time as these immediate peacekeeping deployments. How soon can the Bangladeshis be there, and what safeguards in place?
You're free to make the link, but I don't agree with with the link are human rights concerns, our political concerns, are independent for our needs for peacekeeping. As with all troops, they would go through the human rights due diligence policy. I do expect to have a bit more information from our colleagues in DPKO on the situation regarding these troops, because we are trying to find replacements for the Kenyan troops.
I ask it because of the link, because it seems that the Secretary General himself, in the case of funding, there definitely seemed to be a linkage between human rights criticisms or children and armed conflict criticism of Saudi Arabia and funding offered or not offered to UNRWA or other agencies. So how would it be
Well, I
different
mean, I think
in terms
if,
of the UN's need for
I-
peacekeepers? Is it less
You know,
important?
maybe you and I were different press encounters, but I think I heard the Secretary General be very clear in dealing with Saudi Arabia and the threat of the threats that were received at the time of the report. So there is human rights concerns remain. The issues of funding or of troop contributors is separate.